Dale Vince, great to join you. Thanks for speaking to us at Glastonbury.
Pleasure.
I understand you've got a bit of a history here.
Yeah.
Tell me about that in this very field, I think.
Yeah, that's true. So I came here as a traveller. I spent the 1980s, the whole decade on the road. And towards the end of that, I came here with the convoy, the peace convoy, whatever it was called. And then in the early 90s, I was living on a hill outside Stroud, a little windmill on my trailer. Thought about building a big windmill, and I came back to Glastonbury with this new idea, wind phones. So I put up an old electricity pylon, some train batteries at the bottom, windmill at the top, and 4 of those early transportable phones, you know, the ones that are like a house brick. You carry them like this, and the battery lasted an hour. Set 4 of those up and sold phone calls from here, this field.
That's amazing.
And it was so successful, it was incredible. We were queued 4 wide and 20 deep the whole weekend.
And who were people calling? Just like that.
It's so funny. Everybody did the same thing, I swear. They got like this and they went, I'm calling from Glastonbury. I got in, right, that's on day 1, day 2, whatever. And they're like, I'm talking to you from a wind phone. I don't know what happens when the wind stops. And then by the end of the festival, it's like, oh, I'll meet you in the car park. I'm calling you on a wind phone. I don't know what happens when the wind stops. It's just like that. It's so funny to listen to.
That's where it all started.
In a way. I used the money from that to plough into this project to try and build a big windmill in Stroud, and then I got that built, and then I formed Ecotricity, and yeah, so it kind of cascaded along from there.
And I read that you were sort of planning on selling it. You're not anymore. You're sticking with Ecotricity. You sort of reinvested your.
Well, I tried to sell it during the energy crisis, summer of 22, and it was going quite well. A lot of interest. Then Russia turned the gas off to Europe. That caused a lot of panic in the market. Everybody pulled out except one, and it wasn't a bid that I thought was not credible. I wouldn't say that, but I couldn't be confident that they could do what they said they were going to do, or my people's jobs were safe. So I turned the offer down and moved on. But right now, I'm kind of like all fired up again, almost like from the beginning, because we have the chance to see everything change, the chance to completely fulfill the vision, which was to power Britain in a different way, you know, without carbon emissions and stuff like that. I mean, Labour's commitment on that front is really exciting. We're going to get the chance to bring in, I think, some new technologies like tidal lagoons. We've already begun with gas made from grass. So I'm all fired up again. I think in 2022, I partly thought I'd done enough. I also partly thought I might stand as an MP in this election, and therefore wanted to be unencumbered by a fairly kind of easy win from a critic.
Would that have been as a Labour MP?
Yeah. It would have been fairly easy for somebody to just say, oh, you've got a commercial interest, which people say all the time anyway, but you know, as an MP it wouldn't have been cool. There's a mixture of reasons. I also thought that, I mean, we've got a 2 gigawatt pipeline of projects, which needs roughly £2 billion of investing. And a bit like the electric highway, which I sold just before that, I thought, well, if I find the right owner with the deep pockets, they can take it further and faster. Because we've grown organically from, you know, one man in a caravan with a windmill to 800 people and a $500 million turnover, and you know, a fleet of wind and solar projects and you know, stuff like that. Built Britain's first electric car. We've done all kinds of crazy stuff.
I didn't know that about Britain's first electric car.
Yeah, the Nemesis. We got it on the road in 2010. We started in 2008. And then we built the electric highway, that national network of charging points, first in the world. We've done all kinds of stuff, and it's been fun.
And on Labour, you've mentioned it already, you've got your vote on the 4th of July shirt on. I suppose the critique of Labour from a climate perspective is people say, okay, they're saying nice things, but they're not putting their money where their mouth is. They had this £28 billion a year investment. I think it's down to something under 5.
5 or 12, depending on who you listen to.
Depending on who you're listening to. And they seem to just be saying, don't worry, private investment will come in and do it all for us. And people say, well, how does that make sense? You're presumably less dismissive of this project than other people. I wonder if you could explain why.
Yeah, I will. I would say, at least if Labour are only saying nice words, at least they've got that. The Tories are not saying nice words about the whole green thing, right? They're talking about how we can't afford it, we have to slow it down and that kind of stuff. But I don't think it is just nice words from Labour. And I don't think they're saying it's okay, private money will come in. I mean, that's the argument I've been making. When the 28 billion was reduced, I said, look, I don't think it matters. It's an arbitrary number that Labour announced 2 years previous, I think. And, you know, I understood what they were saying. They don't know how much money there'll be. They don't want to make a commitment. They can't be confident they can deliver. And also, I think they didn't want to give a gift to the right-wing media. You know, we've seen already the focus on the £2,000 higher tax bill. If Labour had committed to spending £28 billion a year, you can imagine Tories would have had great fun with that. So I think it's partly that. I had been arguing that we don't actually need public money to get to 100% green on the grid. That's my response to that. Because the wind and the sun need no public money to build them. And if we just change the planning system, take the shackles off, the ban on onshore wind that David Cameron put in place, then we can get 100% with no public money, which is why I don't think the 28 billion matters that much.
And then in terms of sort of how you've approached the election, I totally, so some people thought, oh, he's gone from Just Stop Oil to the Labour Party, he's gone from direct action to electoralism, what's going on? Now, to me, that makes total sense, actually. That makes total sense to me. What I find a bit more confusing is where you seem to have decided to focus your energies. So you don't seem to have focused your energies in constituencies where it's Labour versus Tory. Some people might say a good party versus a bad party, or a lesser evil party versus an evil party. But you seem to have focused your attention in Bristol and Brighton, where it's specifically,
I hear you. I know the question.
Head-to-head matches between Labour and the Green Party. So what's the logic there? What's going on?
Let me start at the beginning. I did move from Just Stop Oil, and it was to Just Stop the Tories. And the realization was that no amount of protesting was going to change Sunak's mind. And in fact, what had happened is he doubled down on oil and gas in response to the protest because he felt an electoral opportunity to kind of demonize eco-zealots, I think he called us and called me and that kind of stuff. And so further protest by Just Stop Oil was actually counterproductive. And actually we could stop oil at the ballot box if we stopped the Tories. That was the rationale, and it still is the rationale. Coming to your point about the Greens, I'm not against the Greens or anything like that, and I haven't only focused in Brighton and Bristol, but I think it's been the most visible, and I understand that people look at that and say, well, what's going on? And it's mostly this. Only one of two parties can win the election. We know that. And I don't think we can be certain of the outcome. I think the Conservatives and the right-wing media are painting this picture of a supermajority, and it will have the effect of Labour voters staying at home because they think the job's done and they don't need to turn out, and Tory voters turning out because they think, shit, a Labour supermajority, that sounds bad, even though in English politics, British politics, it doesn't exist, right? It's not a thing. It is in American politics. There's a threshold at which you can just do whatever you like. Anyway. And so therefore, I just think we can't afford to split the vote.
But in those two seats, I can see what you're arguing, how that would work in a freeway marginal where you've got the Tories, Labour and the Greens in a seat, and the Tories could sort of creep through. But in Brighton Pavilion and Bristol Central, there's no way that the Conservatives can win those seats.
But it comes down to the point I was going to go on to make about Labour's majority. We can't be confident in the size of that. Can't even be confident in the result, as far as I'm concerned. Voter ID that came in a couple of years ago, the one, when it was first, at the first by-election under voter ID, 3,000 people were not allowed to vote. That's roughly 5%. And if that translated nationally, this will be the first election under voter ID. If that translates, 5% of voters that probably won't vote Tory won't be able to vote.
But let's assume that the polls are like wildly wrong, right? Wildly wrong, and that everything we've sort of been told is a fabrication. Then if it were the case, say, that Labour were short of a majority by 2 and those seats were held by Greens, surely that would be the best thing possible for sort of a climate agenda, because what you'd have is you had Green MPs pulling Labour to be more ambitious on climate change. So to me, the idea of sort of prioritising having 2 extra Labour MPs in Parliament as opposed to 2 extra Green MPs, I still don't really get it.
Understood. I think we have no certainty over the outcome. Will Labour win? How big will the majority be? Will it be very big? Is there room to relax about a couple of seats here and there? I don't think there's room to relax.
Even when the alternative is a Green, is what I mean. Obviously, I don't think we can relax when the alternative is a Tory.
So, to come to your scenario then, I think a government that marginal, right, that requires two Green MPs to get stuff through, I think it'd be a disaster. I think the right-wing media would tear it to pieces. I think it would tear itself to pieces, actually. Labour needs a big majority to make the big changes. It's got to be able to argue that it has a mandate, a massive mandate for the country to make these big changes, right? A Labour Party that doesn't have a majority, propped up by 2 Green MPs to make the big changes we need to make, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not going to happen anyway, unless the polls are completely wildly wrong. Because
that's your hypothetical.
You're answering my question. That's very much fair enough. I suppose people are really asking. They're saying, Dale Vince, right? He's most visibly campaigning in these 2 Labour versus Green seats. Labour have got him to do this, right? Because they thought, who's someone useful that we can put forward to help us in these marginals with the Greens? Let's get someone with a Green vision. And they've said to you, these are the 2 places we want you to go, not to a Labour Tory marginal, but to these 2 places. And then people might say, well, what's in it for you? Have you been offered something?
I hear that too. So let me tell you, Labour have never asked me to do anything. So when the Just Stop Oil, the summer of Just Stop Oil protests, it was a big problem, I think, for Labour. The amount of headlines linking them to Just Stop Oil via me. claiming that Just Stop Oil were writing Labour environment policy, particularly around the North Sea and that kind of stuff. I think it was a big problem. They never said it was. They never asked me to stop supporting Just Stop Oil. Never. We never even had a conversation about it. And the same is true in this election. They've not said to me, they've not asked me to go anywhere, do anything, say anything. They just haven't.
Why not campaigning just, Southampton or Portsmouth or anywhere? There's 650 constituencies. You could have chosen any of them.
No, I know. And I've been supporting Labour candidates in other constituencies. I was meant to go to Lowestoft last week, but the clock ran out on me before coming here and stuff like that. I mean, they're the two most prominent seats that I've been active in. I've done a little bit else. But I want to say that supporting a Labour candidate when the next closest party is Tory, they don't need me for that. It doesn't feel right. I feel, like you said, right. I've got a voice in the green issues. I've got a voice. I've got experience and that kind of stuff, and that perhaps lends some credibility to my words. And my view is that Labour's manifesto is green, and that we can have the greenest government we've ever had.
And is there, because you can imagine a scenario where Labour get into power, you get a peerage, Ecotricity gets a favourable contract, and then people say this is why Dale Vince was in Bristol and Brighton. Is that
so? People do that though, don't they? It's like that's what people do. They think that that's human nature, and we're used to seeing it after 14 years of Tory rule, aren't we? Right?
But would you accept a peerage?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But
would you accept do you think the Green New Deal might be helping Ecotricity in any way?
No, I don't. No? And I've made clear in so many interviews that I don't want anything from a Labour government. Somebody asked me the other day, and maybe it was the FT or somebody, like, we expecting Great British Energy to help us, with some of our projects or something like that. I said, not at all. The wind and sun needs no public money, so there's nothing there. And the projects we want to bring forward that do need some kind of support, for example, would be tidal lagoons. But I would rather give that concept and those projects to Great British Energy than anything else. I would rather give that so that the nation can have the benefit of this incredible resource that we have, which we can talk about off the west coast of our country. It looks like the energy is cheaper, will be cheaper than onshore wind, which is super cheap. I'm not in this for the money. I've been in this money for 30 years. If you go back 30 years, I was in town halls arguing for the planning for these early windmills that people hadn't seen before. And there was always somebody that would say about me and to me that you're only saying that because you've got a business building windmills. That's why you're doing it, which is to mistake cause and effect, right? I believe in wind energy. I believe we have to fight the climate crisis. The way we made electricity back then was the biggest single source of carbon, and so it made sense to go there and try and change that. And that's why I argue for it. It's the other way around.
And finally, let's end on a question sort of somewhat separate to politics. I'm just interested in sort of your take on climate change. Obviously, you've got sort of lots of pedigree here. From what I read, I'm not an expert in any way, actually getting to sort of zero carbon energy is not easy, because obviously it's difficult. It wouldn't, if you'd have said that's easy 20 years ago, people would have laughed at you, right? But it is these sort of difficult issues, meat consumption, creating steel, concrete, all of these things that are sort of the really hard nuts to crack. Yeah. And I suppose, do you have a general philosophy of how we get to net zero outside of the sort of electricity question?
I do. Everything that we need to do, everything that we like to have and love to have, we can have. We just find another way to get them. So my background is in energy, transport and food. I make diamonds from atmospheric carbon. I run a green football club. I launched a zero carbon airline last year, EcoJet. And we've got a project, the toughest nut to crack that you didn't mention actually is decarbonising home heating. Heat pumps are not the answer for that, but gas made from grass is. We've also got a project to make food from grass. We've cracked it in the lab. We can take protein out of grass. It's human edible, like soya protein, for example, in granules. We've got enough grass in our country to feed us twice over in protein consumption. These are all exciting things for me. And I don't see anything that we can't solve, any problem that we can't solve. Can I just add, Labour's commitment to get to 100% green energy by 2030 is super ambitious. I'm an ambitious kind of person, and I just think, well, that's
the speed is ambitious.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. Now you've got the Tories saying we'll have blackouts. You've got the Greens saying they're not going far enough. But the truth is somewhere in the middle is properly ambitious. And if we only get to 90% of that, it'll still be a great achievement. And so I do think Labour have a green manifesto, and I do think we can have a properly green government, and it's a unique chance for us in history to have that. And I'm afraid of blowing it in any possible way.
Dale Vince, we're going to have to get you on for a longer interview about everything that can be done with grass at some point. But for now, I'm going to let you go to a talk. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Mine too. Thank you.